The rain tasted like ash. It clung to my skin, a greasy film mirroring the grime that had permanently etched itself under my fingernails. Another downpour, another night spent huddled in the skeletal remains of what was once a village, now a ghost town whispering secrets only the wind understood. The silence was the worst part, a heavy blanket smothering any flicker of hope. Even the crickets had abandoned this place, their chirps replaced by the rhythmic thump of my own heart, a frantic drumbeat against the quiet terror that gnawed at my insides. My rifle, cold and unforgiving, was the only thing I trusted, a steel extension of my own fractured will. It lay across my lap, a silent promise of violence, a shield against the darkness that pressed in from all sides. But even it couldn't protect me from the memories that clawed their way up from the depths, each one a shard of glass piercing my soul. The flickering orange glow of the dying fire painted grotesque shadows on the crumbling walls, turning familiar shapes into monstrous figures. I stared into the embers, searching for some flicker of warmth, some sign that the man I once was still existed beneath the layers of hardened steel and ingrained brutality. But all I saw were faces, the faces of the dead, their eyes accusing, their mouths frozen in silent screams. They were always there, lurking in the periphery, waiting for a moment of weakness to drag me down into the abyss with them. And tonight, the abyss felt particularly close, its icy tendrils reaching out, promising oblivion. I closed my eyes, but the images only intensified, a relentless slideshow of carnage and despair. Each raindrop felt like a tiny hammer blow, driving the guilt deeper into my bones. I was a weapon, honed to a razor's edge, trained to kill without hesitation, without remorse. But somewhere along the line, the weapon had become the man, and the man had become this. A hollow shell, haunted by ghosts, drowning in a sea of regret. What was the point? What was the purpose of all this bloodshed, all this suffering? Was there any redemption for a soul stained so deeply with blood? The questions echoed in the silence, unanswered, unanswerable. I took a long, slow breath, the air heavy with the scent of rain and decay. I had to find a way to silence the ghosts, to find some measure of peace, even if it meant facing the darkness head-on. It started with a memory of a different life, a life before the war, before the training, before the killing, a life where I was just a boy. It was summer, and the air hung thick and heavy with the scent of honeysuckle. Sunlight dripped through the leaves of the ancient oak tree in our backyard, creating dappled patterns on the grass. I was 8 years old, barefoot and carefree, chasing fireflies with my sister, Lily. Her laughter was a melody, a bright, joyful sound that filled the air and chased away the shadows. She was 2 years older, my protector, my confidant, my best friend. We were inseparable, two peas in a pod, bound together by a love that felt as strong and enduring as the oak tree itself. I remember the way her hair, the color of spun gold, would catch the light as she ran, her eyes sparkling with mischief and joy. She always won, always let me think I had a chance, and always made me laugh even when I was upset. Our backyard was our kingdom, a magical place where anything was possible. We built forts out of blankets and branches, fought imaginary dragons with wooden swords, and dreamed of adventures in faraway lands. Lily was the queen, of course, and I was her loyal knight, always ready to defend her honor and fight by her side. She told the best stories, tales of brave princesses and valiant heroes, of mythical creatures and enchanted forests. She painted worlds with her words, worlds that were far more exciting and vibrant than the mundane reality we inhabited. And I believed every word, hanging on to her every syllable, lost in the magic of her imagination. One evening, as the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Lily sat beside me on the porch swing, her arm draped protectively around my shoulders. "Promise me something," she said, her voice soft and serious. "Promise me that you'll always be brave, no matter what happens. Promise me that you'll always fight for what's right." I looked into her eyes, her beautiful, knowing eyes, and I saw a depth of understanding that belied her young age. "I promise," I said, my voice filled with conviction. "I promise I'll always be brave, and I'll always fight for what's right." She smiled, a radiant, heartwarming smile that I would carry with me for the rest of my life. "I know you will," she said. "I always knew you would." That was the last truly happy moment I could clearly recall, a moment of pure, unadulterated joy, a memory that had somehow managed to survive the darkness, a flickering flame in the desolate wasteland of my soul. It was a promise I had made, a promise I had broken, and a promise I desperately needed to find a way to keep. The desert wind carried their names, whispered accusations I couldn't escape. The ambush was textbook, a flawlessly executed nightmare. We were patrolling a known insurgent route, a narrow canyon carved into the ochre landscape. The heat shimmered, distorting the air, making everything seem unreal, a mirage about to shatter. I remember the metallic tang of fear, the dry rasp of my throat as I swallowed, trying to ignore the knot tightening in my gut. Then the world exploded. RPG rounds slammed into the Humvee ahead, turning it into a twisted pyre of metal and flesh. Machine gun fire ripped through the air, tearing chunks out of the canyon walls. We were pinned, caught in a crossfire, the echoes amplifying the chaos. Adrenaline surged, sharpening my senses, slowing time. Training took over. I dove for cover behind a rocky outcrop, barking orders, trying to organize a counterattack. But the insurgents were relentless, their fire accurate and overwhelming. We were outnumbered, outgunned, and slowly being bled dry. I saw Sanchez go down, a crimson stain blooming on his chest. Then Miller, his face frozen in a mask of terror, his body riddled with bullets. Each death was a hammer blow, chipping away at the veneer of invincibility we wore. We fought like demons, fueled by adrenaline and desperation. But it wasn't enough. The insurgents pressed their advantage, closing in, their shadows lengthening in the dying light. I remember the sickening thud as a grenade landed near me, the frantic scramble for cover, the deafening roar as it detonated. Shrapnel tore into my leg, sending a searing pain through my body. I crawled behind a boulder, clutching my leg, watching the carnage unfold. I saw Jackson, our medic, desperately trying to save Miller, his hands stained crimson. Then a sniper round found him, silencing his efforts forever. I wanted to scream, to rage, to unleash the fury that burned inside me. But I was trapped, helpless, forced to witness the slaughter. Then I saw him. A young boy, no older than 10, his eyes filled with a chilling emptiness, calmly reloading an AK-47. He raised the weapon, his finger tightening on the trigger. I knew, with a sickening certainty, that he was about to kill Jackson. I didn't think. I reacted. I raised my rifle, aimed, and fired. The boy crumpled to the ground, a small, lifeless heap. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the crackling of the burning Humvee and the ragged gasps of the wounded. I stared at the boy's body, a cold dread creeping into my soul. I had killed a child. I had become the very thing I was fighting against. The rest of the ambush is a blur. Reinforcements arrived, scattering the remaining insurgents. We were evacuated, patched up, and sent back to base. But the image of that boy, his lifeless eyes staring up at the sky, remained burned into my memory. It was a stain I could never wash away. Now the desert is here, in this room, in the silence that suffocates me. It clings to my skin, gritty and unforgiving. The nightmares are relentless, vivid replays of that day, the faces of the dead, the boy's empty stare. Sleep offers no escape, only a descent into a hell of my own making. I try to find solace in routine, in the mundane tasks that fill my days. I wake before dawn, run until my lungs burn, push my body to the point of collapse. It's a temporary reprieve, a fleeting moment of control in a world that feels utterly chaotic. But the calm never lasts. The memories always resurface, dragging me back into the darkness. I see a therapist, a kind woman with gentle eyes and a soothing voice. She listens patiently as I recount my experiences, offering words of comfort and understanding. But her words feel hollow, inadequate against the weight of my guilt. She tells me I'm suffering from PTSD, that my reactions are normal, that I can heal. But I don't believe her. I feel broken, irreparably damaged. I avoid crowds, loud noises, anything that might trigger a flashback. I isolate myself, building walls around my heart, pushing away anyone who tries to get close. My wife, Sarah, tries her best to understand, but I can see the strain in her eyes, the fear that I'm slipping away from her. I love her desperately, but I can't let her see the monster I've become. Sometimes I find myself staring at my reflection, searching for the man I used to be, but he's gone, replaced by a hollow-eyed stranger haunted by ghosts. I try to remember the ideals that led me to join the Special Forces, the desire to protect and serve, but those ideals feel tarnished, tainted by the blood I've spilled. The silence is the worst. It's in the mornings when I wake up alone in the bed, feeling the emptiness of the house, the weight of the day ahead. It's in the evenings when Sarah tries to talk to me, and I find myself unable to respond, lost in the labyrinth of my own mind. It's the silence of the grave, the silence of regret, the silence that screams louder than any gunshot. I don't know if I'll ever find peace. I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive myself for what I've done. All I know is that I'm trapped, caught between the man I was and the monster I've become, forever haunted by the ghost of a boy in the desert. And the silence just keeps getting louder. The sterile white room dissolved. I was back in the jungle, the oppressive humidity clinging to me like a shroud. But it wasn't the same jungle. This one was silent, devoid of the cacophony of life that once masked the ever-present threat. It was a jungle of memory, a landscape sculpted by regret. I saw him then, Ethan, standing by the river, the same river where I had failed him. He didn't turn, he didn't speak, but I knew he saw me. The weight of his unspoken accusation was heavier than any weapon I'd ever carried. I tried to reach him, to apologize, to explain the impossible choices I had faced, but my legs were leaden, my voice a strangled whisper lost in the void. Then the jungle began to fade, the image of Ethan shimmering like a mirage. I was back in the chair, the doctor's gaze unwavering. But something had shifted. The cold detachment in his eyes was gone, replaced by a flicker of something akin to understanding, or perhaps simply pity. "It's over," he said, his voice softer now. "You faced it. You've spoken it. The process is complete." Complete? What was complete? The destruction of my soul? The erasure of my humanity? I felt emptier than ever, a hollow shell haunted by the ghosts of my past. But then a different kind of feeling began to stir, a faint ember in the ashes of my despair. It wasn't hope, not yet, but it was something, a possibility. "What now?" I croaked, my voice raspy and unfamiliar. The doctor leaned forward. "Now you begin the work of rebuilding, of understanding, of forgiveness." Forgiveness? Could I ever forgive myself? Could I ever atone for the things I had done, the lives I had taken? He seemed to read my thoughts. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about accepting. Accepting the past, accepting your limitations, accepting the fact that you are human, capable of both great good and terrible evil. It's about choosing to move forward, to live in the light despite the darkness that still clings to you. He handed me a small, worn photograph. It was Ethan, smiling, holding a fish almost as big as himself. The sunlight glinted in his eyes, reflecting a joy that had been extinguished too soon. "His parents wanted you to have this," the doctor said. "They said he always looked up to you." The dam broke. The tears I had suppressed for so long, the tears I had been trained to never shed, finally flowed, a torrent of grief and regret. I wept for Ethan, for his lost potential, for the innocence that had been stolen from him. I wept for myself, for the man I was, for the man I could never be again. But amidst the tears, something else emerged, a sense of release, a sense of acceptance, a tiny spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, I could find a way to live with the ghosts. Maybe I could even find a way to honor them. I looked at the doctor, my eyes red and swollen, but clear. I want to